Welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode from the Education Showroom. And listeners, watchers, thank you very much as always for coming and supporting us and joining us, because this week, as you can already see, we have something very, very different and very, very special for you. So this is the Education Showroom's podcast in association with the fantastic organization Next Gen Skills Academy. Now, you are dialing in to this podcast because you clearly, like ourselves, passionate and interested to explore, discuss, learn, debate, kind of go away, reflect about the real world skills without the workplace. How can education bridge that experience gap when it's so difficult? So the formal title of this podcast is Real World Skills Without the Workplace, and how and what can education do to bridge that experience gap? So I'm sure you'll agree it's a really interesting topic today. In typical Education Showroom fashion, we're going to quickly go around the room. We're going to say hello to everybody and to hear a little bit about each person, their background, their experience. And we're going to start with the wonderful Anita this morning. Good morning, Anita.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today, Matt. And hello to all our lovely panelists as well. Thanks for joining us. I work with Next Gen Skills Academy. I've been responsible for the launch of RISE. So we've brought together today some other educators and learners and industry to let you know about what we can bring to the table for you.
Love it. Thank you, Anita. That's great. Ant, good morning. Great to see you.
Hi, yeah. Thanks for having me along as well. So I'm Anthony Kane, currently the course leader for games development up at Teesside University. And I've worked with Next Gen Skills Academy for, well, maybe since the start now, I guess. It's been a fair while, over 10 years at this point. Still teach on their sort of evening boot camps. And aside from that, I kind of advise on level 3 exams and assessments around games development, games design, that sort of thing. So yeah, been doing this for about 20 years in total, mostly around the north of England. So yeah.
Sounds a very exciting role. I'm very envious, I must say. It sounds very exciting and rewarding. Tom, good morning. Great to see you.
Oh, good morning. Lovely to be here. So yeah, I'm Tom Box, co-founder of Blue Zoo Animation, and Blue Zoo is one of the largest and leading animation studios in the UK, responsible for making shows like Number Blocks or The Adventures of Paddington, to name a few. And we started the studio in our final year at university when we were 26 years ago now, studying at Bournemouth University, studying animation. And we decided to set a studio up. And I've always been in the technical side as well as the creative side. So, you know, developing software. And we really do a lot of industry advocacy and help with skills development and skills gaps. And we work very closely with Next Gen since its inception to help Next Gen make sure that they're aligned with where industry's going. So yeah, here to talk about that.
Okay. Thanks so much. Sounds really great, Tom. Chris, good morning. Love the hat, by the way.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm Chris Jeffrey. I'm the program lead for games over at Sunderland College. I've been in games education for about 10 years now, so I've been working with Next Gen pretty much since their start as well. I'm an indie developer. I've been making games for about 19 years or so now, making a load of web games. A lot of these games are probably on websites that kids shouldn't be on in school when they're in IT, playing like silly little games, making all those kind of stuff with a lot of cool companies. At the moment, I'm working with my own company called Made by Titans on a Nintendo Switch title as well, which is really, really cool. So I'm a mix.
Super, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. That's a great intro. And again, like I mentioned to Ant, sounds very exciting. And you said you're from Sunderland, Chris, is that right?
Yeah. I'm based in Sunderland at the moment. I'm from County Durham.
Yeah, and you guys are doing fantastic in the Premier League. So my hat off to you guys as well. Paris, good morning. Lovely to see you. We'd love to learn a little bit about yourself, if that's all right too.
Morning. Yes, so I'm Paris, and I'm currently a CG generalist freelancer. My credits include Titanic, The Digital Resurrection, and David Attenborough VR on Meta headset. and I am a ex-student of the Next Gen Rise program with the Blue Zoo Bootcamp. Yeah, and I'm here to talk about the bridge between the two.
Fantastic. And that kind of ties us into getting the podcast formally started with our first of several questions. Ladies and gentlemen, the first question I'd like to kind of go through today, and I think, yeah, I think it's a great starting point, is we like to focus on the challenge, the issue, the problem, the roadblocks, the hurdles, if you like, with work experience and education. So we talk about schools, multi-academy trusts, colleges perhaps, but zoning in those specific challenges between the work experience and education and that gap, as Paris says. And I think we'd love to talk about that challenge and what it looks like. I'd love to start off with Ant, if that's all right. And please feel free, anybody, chime in, let's debate it, let's discuss it this morning, freestyle. But Ant, if you could kind of set the pathway for us. So the challenges you see it between education, work experience, and what that gap looks like.
Oh yeah, I'd say maybe the biggest one, the first one that springs to mind, is just the sheer volume of students who want to study these topics. Because let's face it, they're awesome. So why wouldn't you want to study them? I guess it's a bit like if you were being a football coach, like everybody wants to be a footballer when they're young, and you can't possibly get them all in a professional team. And it's that sort of thing where we might have 100 students in a year that want to go and get a placement, and there just aren't that many placement opportunities. So I would say that's the main challenge, the sheer level of interest in making games, animations, visual effects. I don't think there are enough studios to accommodate that many students at the sort of time frame we would want. We want them to get weeks and weeks, months, years, ideally, of experience during study, and there's too many of them. There's too many students for that, which is a nice problem to have, but it is a problem. So yeah, that's the big one for me.
Huge demand versus the ability to accommodate that demand. It's interesting. Tom, first, do you guys would resonate and have the same kind of thoughts and challenges?
Yeah, I think for us, and the challenges, the post-COVID work environment, really, which has obviously changed massively from in studio to hybrid or fully remote, and the multiple challenges that come with that. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits, but everything is about balance. And from our perspective, we see some of the biggest issues with work experience is really around that we don't have many staff in the studio anymore, where 90% of our team is spread around the UK, which is great from kind of geographic inclusivity and socio-economic inclusivity, but then it very much limits the amount we can do in studio. Having someone in doing a placement for 5 days a week when there's no one in the studio 5 days a week. So for us, it's really looking at what skills are needed to bridge that gap, and how we can use technology to bridge that gap as well when everyone's using technology to communicate. So it's making kind of really aligning those issues and finding solutions.
That's really interesting, Tom. I mean, one of the things that leaps out to me, and obviously with my experience as well at the Education Showroom, is it's not just those skills you need remotely, but those behaviours. And obviously, when you're managing staff remotely, it's that trust factor, it's the hard work factor, it's communication, it's management, it's supervision. So skills and behaviours as well. How does that fit into your kind of thought?
Yeah. I think it's a key thing, because when we look at skills, it's usually split into hard skills and soft skills or personal skills, whatever the correct phrase of the time is. But I think that's really where it comes in. I think additionally, there's new entrants to the workplace have no frame of reference to what it was like pre-COVID. Yeah. So there's an education done around the benefits of having kind of physical presence, because we find that when it comes to creativity, which is the industry we're in, it's very hard to be fully creative as we were when we're in a very transactional world where you have to set up a Zoom call to, you know, to have a session. And that's not where the best ideas come from. The best ideas come from when you are just sitting next to someone, you see something on their screen, you go, that looks amazing. What is that? And equally, when it comes to learning, you can see someone using a tool and some software. They're like, I've had no idea that tool existed. That workflow you're doing is really good. So it's all of those things. And I think from a new entrance perspective, I think one of the biggest things that we've seen is just the interpersonal skills and remote working skills of, for example, you know, having your camera on a call, because so much we're in a visual industry, so much communication is visual. So we find it's and if someone's used to not having their camera on, and you know, wherever they've been in education, it's very hard when it comes to being in a workplace, because they're invisible and career progression doesn't happen if you're invisible. And it's about bringing a team together, everyone knowing each other, everyone bouncing off each other. So there's very small little kind of nuanced details of when it comes to communication, and seeing how we can recognize those, and, you know, give people kind of communication literacy in a way of how the very best teams work together in kind of work hybrid and remote environments, which is always an evolving process.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Brilliant contribution. And Chris, what about your experience?
Yeah, so I guess when we're looking at like challenges for kind of like meaningful work experience and stuff like that, I think it's easy to look towards the industry and look at like the limited employer capacity, but it's also good to look like internally and look at education as well and look how that works, because like staff workload and having people kind of on hand to be able to actually do this stuff is quite hard. Like you need dedicated staff to be able to seek these kind of opportunity out to even create them as a start. So like local networking and going to all these networking events and speaking with industry to figure out like, well, what opportunities have they got and how do we kind of present these to our students and get them involved, but then also to kind of like look after them whilst they're going through that process as well, and be that point of contact. Like education just doesn't have that much time to be able to do that as well as it should and as well as it could, to obviously make students as best as possible and as industry ready as possible. Like that gets quite challenging.
I'd add to that and say it's the same in industry, where everyone's figuring out how to keep the cash flow running. You know, is the cost of living equally applies to companies as it does to individuals. So it's trying to figure out how to do work experiences when everyone's, you know, maxed out every single day, because times are tight. So I think, you know, that not enough hours in the day applies to both sides.
Yeah, definitely.
Really interesting. Thanks, gentlemen. All right, so just got an interesting question for yourself. Throughout your experience, obviously you've been a graduate of the Next Gen Academy. What was the main skill and or behavior that Tom and I have spoken about, that the group spoke about, and Chris? What is that key skill or behavior that you've now learned, adopted, experienced, and it's like, wow, what does that look like to you? What is that key skill that you've learned from this work experience, or behavior, or both parts?
Well, for me, it was mostly a confidence thing, because it's very daunting going from a graduate to the industry, because as a student, you know, you spend most of your time learning, like you demo, you do, and then you practice the skills, but then you don't really have much time to learn how to action those skills. So confidence is definitely like the main thing. And also this boot camp, you know, it gave you the chance to action it without the pressures of a real workplace. So in the education space, you know, if you miss a deadline or you mess up, you know, it's only you let down. Whereas if you're in a team, you not only let your team down, you let your employer down, and then you let the client down. So when you have that practice in a real, well, fictional but real at the same time, it alleviates those pressures, and you kind of realize, yeah, I can do this. and you get the practices that you wouldn't normally get, like dailies. That was a new thing that you don't really get at university. So when it was time to enter the workplace, it was like, I know what I'm doing. I'm confident I can do this.
Yeah.
Let's do it for real. So yeah, kind of like that.
I think that's a great answer, and that is beautifully dovetailed onto, I think, our next phase, if you like, of today's podcast. So thank you, Bryce. And that is, what can education do differently, better, to support our young people and to drive work experience and employment and blossom and develop skills and all of those incredible attributes. So we're going to focus now on what can education do differently and or better. Anita, I bet you feel like I'm picking them now, don't you? Would you like to start us off again this morning? What's your view? If you had a blank canvas, a piece of A4 paper blank, and you had to kind of bullet point top 3, top 5 things that education could do, would do, should do, in your view, what would that look like?
Oh, it's a big question. I think it's quite interesting how Paris finished there, where there was very little mention of the technical skills, and I think that is quite a big sort of realization that students have. It's like a lot of places you could learn the technical skills while you're there. It's getting in the door, isn't it? So those sort of soft skills, that just being a nice, employable human being is probably more valuable than a lot of the technical skills. So I feel like if I were to remake a course, I would want as much kind of public output from it as possible, almost getting those first few titles on the CV before you've even graduated. So there's often like a few sort of memes about students needing experience before they've got experience, and I think if you can build that into courses where you've got actual sort of commercial output, very sort of visible profile, they've gone through then all those soft skills, they've had to work in teams, they've had to communicate with people from other disciplines. So Chris might chuckle when I say this, but I'm a big advocate for like game jams, because I do think that they put students in that sort of situation where they just have to get something across the finish line, and to do that they've got to work in little areas they hadn't previously considered. They've got to plan, they've got to actually hit the button that publishes a game to whatever platform they're going for, and they've normally got to speak with other people, they've got to hit certain rules that the jam might impose, but going beyond that, scaling that up at the university, we've got like an incubation system where students in their final year of study can put forward a case for starting a new business, so they can start to build that team there. So I quite like that idea of just being as kind of industry facing. I might get slapped on the wrist, but I often tell students that the grades aren't really important. It's like the portfolio. It's not the best idea. Having a certificate that claims you can do something is never as good as the actual physical evidence that you've done that. So I think making courses as practical and commercial as possible it would be beneficial for that.
Right. Tom, if you were to continue to add to Ant's bullet points, if you stole his piece of paper or a blank canvas, what would you add some additional points on, if any?
I guess for us, we want to see that enthusiasm, that ingenuity, that passion shine through in a portfolio, because we're a portfolio-based recruitment industry. Like Ant said, we're not looking at what grades you can get, we're looking at what you've made, because that evidence is where your strengths lie. And I think for us, we really want to employ people who are just very good problem solvers, and they're creative problem solvers with great foundational kind of artistic or technical skills, who are proactive, who have shown like they've made this, they've had a problem, they've gone off, they've figured it out. Where what we're not looking is for people who just sit there and say, what do I do next? What do I do next? Where we want someone to be a little bit more saying, should I do this next, rather than just waiting to be told. So which is quite hard to decipher from a CV or portfolio. So the way we do that is seeing what projects they've been done, and again, Next Gen Rise, seeing what people have made in a group team project is a brilliant way of showing that, when we can ask them, what challenge did you have and how did you solve that? So it gives them great ways of explaining that how they solve problems, because that's what we're employing people to do at the end of the day, where it's millions of small little problems that end up being one final product. So yeah, for us it's really about that, more the vocational side of problem solving, less than the theory of how to use a specific bit of software. You know, teaching people where the buttons is the easy bit, and it's really that foundational stuff that we focus on.
Thanks, Tom. Again, it's almost that attitude as well as
it's totally the attitude.
I love the words that you said there about being proactive. What would you like me to do? You know, rather than the what it would you like me. I like that. I think that's really, really key. Thank you for sharing those. Chris, what's your thoughts, please, on this? What can education do differently or better?
Yeah, so honestly, like echoing both the things that Tom and Anne said there so much. I think make as kind of much as possible. We do a lot of project-based learning at Sunderland, a little kind of education keyword there, but again, like allowing kind of students to kind of solve complex real-world problems through like a live industry brief, and actually like gaining and seeking these skills and kind of working things out themselves. And I feel like project-based learning as an approach like builds a lot of these soft skills as well. It allows kind of students to have massive ownership over the projects that they're working on, meaning that they control that time management, they control teamwork, their communication, giving and receiving feedback as well, which again is one of those really key kind of soft skills that I see a lot of some of our students as well kind of leaving and still being a bit weaker on, that they could definitely strengthen. That adaptability, that professionalism, I think kind of really shines through when you kind of run projects that way. So yeah, involving industry as much as possible through your curriculum, like designing your curriculum with industry involvement throughout, whether that be live briefs or project-based learning is a must.
That's really interesting. And I think just sharing my own personal experience of when I was doing, you know, work experience, getting into industry, getting into business, and how it felt for me bridging that gap. And I'm an old boy now, you can tell my hair's going, because I'm talking 35, 40 years ago now. I think the main thing for me is if I was to say 80-20 or 70-30, the biggest, I'm going to say shock, I'm going to use that language, the biggest shock for me as a learner, as a student, is I felt that in education, too much of stuff that I would very rarely apply was programmed into me, and not enough stuff of the what I would call core, hugely important, apply almost every minute of every day. I felt that was the shock for me, which is, my God, goodness, I wish I'd learned more of that and spent more time on that and become a master of this, rather than having this huge breadth of A to Z. And I'm thinking, well, from A to Q, I'm not applying these on a day-to-day basis now and again, perhaps. That is the biggest kind of one of the biggest takeaways for me when I was preparing for this and thinking about my own personal experiences. More of the relevance of the most commonly requested skills, behaviors, demonstrate those attitudes, and perhaps less or managed or educated me differently on those areas that wouldn't be as applied or as necessary as often as it was. I think that's my own personal kind of experience. Moving over to one of the next questions really now about, you know, transitioning away from what can education do differently, and I think there's some brilliant points there, is let's start to talk about RISE, and I'm going to come to Anita at this point, and this is a brilliant point, everybody, so listeners, to hear from Anita about RISE and what it is and how incredibly impactful it is. Anita, the floor is yours, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Well, RISE is the remote industry studio experience that was developed and designed with the help of lovely Tom Box here from Blue Zoo. And it's what you've all been saying at the end of the day, especially post-COVID. I think a lot of workforces had become more flexible. People were able to work from home. Once upon a time, you know, studios didn't share anything. Everything was done in-house. But now that groups are working often hybrid, they still need to work together. And we're finding that whether it's working or studying, a lot of people were doing that for those few years during COVID. And it became really useful to design something that a platform that everyone could share. So it's a learning platform that's designed for people to work together on these group projects. So it's a great way to learn. And as you say, it can reach everyone all over the country. So if someone is know the technical skills, but they've never had industry experience. They've never worked as a group. It's a great way for them to practice that, and also by doing so, they become their portfolio is more competitive because they have actually worked with industry before, and so they can actually apply for their jobs in a town or a city where they've never lived before. If they can't afford to move there, perhaps it's better to secure a job first. So having that work experience is really useful and helps them succeed. One of the things about Rise as well is that we also not only have the pipeline, so we have an industry brief that's set by industry, whether it's in games, visual effects, or animation. And as they work on their projects, they get feedback throughout. And the Next Gen manages everything when it comes to the admin, and it can slot into any curriculum. And at the end of the day, we also offer an employability skills workshop as well. So we talk about how they can speak to each other, how they can share feedback, and how they can take feedback and what to look for. So they're studio ready, which is what the industry wants at the end of the day.
Yeah, studio ready. Great, Simon. Paris, with your permission, I'll come back to you at this point. I'd love to learn the impact that Rise has had and that has helped you to develop personally, professionally, skills, attributes. Tell us about the impact of Rise and Russell, starting with that confidence behaviour.
Yeah, because you've basically proven to yourself that you're studio ready. So you've done the soft skills, you've learned the hard skills from uni and that you can implement them in the workplace. You have the employability training, and really you're given everything to, like, whatever your worst thoughts are, you've been given something practical to challenge that. Yeah, so going forward, it's like I know I can work in a team. I've done it. I know I can communicate. I've done it. I received positive feedback from my team and my coordinator and all the other people that I worked with, and it's like, so going forward, there's no reason for me to doubt myself.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, you know, I've got another piece for my portfolio now. It's all practical. It's hard and soft skills. It's all just so practical that there's no reason going forward why anything should hold you back.
And Paris, just to complement that, how did, let's call it the Rise experience, working as a part of the Rise program, how did that compare to traditional coursework and projects that you've done before that or alongside it? How did it compare, again, the experiences and the learnings and what you could apply and take away? What did that comparative look like?
Well, at university, you're studying the job. I found, in my experience, everyone mostly worked on their own. Like, there was a one-person team.
Yeah.
We had maybe 1 or 2 projects where you could collaborate, but most of it was just you in your bubble, learning, practicing. Whereas, you know, in Rise, you really are put to the test. Like, can I do it for real? So you're not studying the job. You know you can do the job.
How much more impactful was the Rise program and the influence, the positive influence that had on you? Do you feel that that was an absolute game changer for you as an individual?
I'd say so. And also, like, when it came to my CV and my portfolio, to be able to say, like, I've done something with a company like Bluezoo, which is one of the leading studios, you know, that makes a difference going forward, and it does give you a bit more recognition to have a studio like Bluezoo on your CV.
I'm going to go back to Anita. Thank you so much, Paris. I'm going to go back to Anita at this point. Anita, if that's okay.
Sure.
For the listeners out there, for organizations out there, how can they learn more about Rise? Schools, colleges, universities, organizations, how can they get more visibility on Rise? I'm sure there's so many leaders listening or watching this podcast going, oh, this sounds good. I'd love to learn more, read more, hear more. Do you mind directing us to where that can happen?
Yeah, well, we already work with a number of colleges and universities up and down the country, and we specifically do other work experience support as well for schools and universities. And all they have to do is drop us a line, which I can leave those details with you. So if they email that they're interested in Rise, we can let them know what we can do for them, whether they're teaching game design or game art or visual effects or animation. If they have students that are learning how to build environments or modeling or lighting or texturing, we can help them with any type of group project. I mean, we've even had people studying architecture because they have to create landscapes and things like that are interested as well. But there's a large number of industries that have students or need students that have learned these digital skills. So it's a great way for them to learn how to put a project together. But if they want to get in touch with Marcia.Deacon at nextgenskillsacademy.com, and if they've been listening to this podcast, they can we can offer them a discount as well. If they mention that they've heard this podcast on the Education Showroom, we'd be happy to give them a 20% discount, and we can slot it into any curriculum. So whether they want to do 1 day a week for 5 weeks or an intensive week or stretch it over 2 weeks, we can slot it in, and we have the support of our own admin team. So really the instructors can take some time off for a little while we deliver the course.
So if you're a school, mat, college, university listener to today's podcast and you're thinking, sounds great, you've now heard the contact details from Anita. And if you're thinking, how can you, your colleagues, your school, your college, your university, how can you improve the quality of work experience and industry readiness and preparation for your learners? Well, hopefully today's content has been really, really useful. And again, I'd strongly encourage you to get in touch with Anita. Excellent. Just before we finish today's podcast, Ant, thank you very, very much indeed. We're very grateful for you coming today. Tom, great to meet you. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your thoughts. It's been great. Chris, always wonderful to talk to you, and keep going Sunderland in the Premier League. Horace, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences. It sounds absolutely fantastic, and we're very, very grateful. Anita, just one final question. I always like to end on this question so the audience are absolutely clear with the Next Gen Academy. Just in 60 seconds, can you summarize Next Gen Academy to bring all of this lovely content together?
Well, Next Gen Skills Academy, we're all about helping the digital artists of tomorrow and making sure that we can help them carve a pathway to their career, launch their career. And we believe there's talent all over the country. They just have to be given that opportunity to shine. So I should actually really thank all of you for being here. Tom, for helping us and supporting us with the design of Rise. Ant and Chris for being amazing and helping support those students and bring that to the table. And Paris, it's wonderful to hear about your success, and I wish you all the best in the future as well. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Listeners, thank you very much for dialing in. We hope you really enjoyed the content. Next Gen Skills Academy, the program that we've spoken about today, is Rise. If this is something you feel can help improve your school, college, university, I'm sure Anita and her colleagues would love to hear from you. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in, and we'll see you next week for next week's podcast.
Thank you, Matt.